Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Hello, welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. This is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe joining you at about 10:30 on January 1st, 2024. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to see your face. Good to see you alive and about as well rested as I can imagine you can be at this moment in time.
It's so great. Like this morning,
you've got the team zip. You've got the Jason Kidd glasses on.
My wife at about 5:45 this morning, she walks in. And the boy slept from about he has stretches, but he just has periods in the night where he just won't sleep. He's only 8 weeks old. This stuff will work itself out, and if not, we'll pay someone to help us. That's I will lose my mind at that point. But about 5:45, she walks into me and she goes, "You get to deal with this now." And so that's just kind of been my day. And this game really put a punctuation point on a hilariously just dumb all around day for me. And that's sort of the way this goes. You look forward to a game, you look forward to little shooty hoops. The Dallas Mavericks didn't have to play on New Year's Eve, which I was like gleeful for, because I didn't want to cover a basketball game on New Year's Eve. Not like I did anything. I watched Fargo. That was pretty fun. And the Mavericks come out and they, for those of you who are listening and may not know, the Mavericks got waxed by the fucking Utah Jazz to start the year, 127-90. That is a nearly 40-point loss to the Utah Jazz. And so I also was on recap duty tonight. And anybody that's read me, I sort of use like the recap to work through my feelings. It's sort of a therapy process in and of itself. And I started writing because pretty much anybody but Jaden Hardy and then Derek Lively's offense I was pissed at. And we'll get to that on this show if we want to. But I just said, fuck it. Sometimes in 82 games, you're going to have a game like this. And what I can't possibly fathom, and the chat is really, really in tune with this tonight, is what the hell? Like, how is a coaching staff, are you that unprepared to play on the third game of a 3-game road trip? Like they looked like, they look like they went out in Utah on Sunday, like, which probably isn't even a thing. Did they drink a bunch of 1% beers? Like, what was that game?
I don't know. Historically, we've done this enough. The last game of a road trip is never a good one.
That's a good point. Okay.
But because, someone was, I'm kind of having a back and forth with someone in my mentions about that, which is like, it happens. Last game of a road trip. Like, but that doesn't mean you get to lay an egg. You get to lay an egg. Like, I wasn't shocked. Like, my main thing is I wasn't shocked the Mavericks lost because Utah at full strength, they got some guys. Like, Lauri Markkanen is really good.
They're going to be trade market players because Danny Ainge is just going to extract value for people.
Yeah, like Lauri Markkanen's good. John Collins is whatever, but like he's a player who puts up numbers. Colin Sexton's not bad. Kelly Olynyk's pretty good. Jordan Clarkson's pretty good. Like Walker Kessler is pretty good. Like they've got some guys. We both love Keontae George. Shout out to the former DFW, or not former, but shout out to the DFW native. Like, they got some guys.
Louisville High School?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not the team they played, earlier when they beat by 50. Like, they got some guys.
Your
So,
camera
like,
died.
yeah. Oh, sorry. I'll keep talking, but I'll get
No,
it.
keep talking.
I know. Like I said, they got some guys, so I wasn't shocked they lost, but they were never competitive. Like, this game was never competitive. I mean, they got it to 5 in like the second half, and I think in the third quarter, but they never had a chance to tie. They never had a chance to take the lead. Like, they got their asses kicked from opening tip to closing buzzer, and that's the part where I'm like, all right, come on now. Like,
they got beat by the Fonz. Okay, some guy, and look, I'm not going to act like my there's two kinds of fans. I think of the NBA. You kind of have like your more hardcore fan of dudes who watch every game, like our guy Micah, who comes on. I think he watches just tons of basketball. Then you get kind of your team, your folks that watch your team only. I follow a hell of a lot of basketball, but I don't watch a ton anymore because I just can't. It's not in my life. I had no idea who Simone Fontecchio was. None. And he hung 12 quick points on the Mavericks, and it was immediately an oh no, this is going to be a long day.
Yeah, 24 points, which is a season high. He played in the 50-point blowout. He had 7 points in that game. So take that for what you will. They smartly, like, Luka was guarding him, and they immediately just ran like off ball action to get him open for threes, because it was pretty evident from opening tip that Luka had no interest in playing defense. Right. And the Jazz, okay, we'll see ya. We're gonna burn you on some off ball screens and flare actions.
And it's to the point where, like, let's just sort of start with Luka. And we'll go through this as the game wears on, and we can kind of talk about guys in different situations. Like, look, we will praise Luka when he deserves praise. We will absolutely beat on Luka when he deserves it. And he was awful tonight. This is one of his most frustrating offensive and defensive performances, which he's not really given us a lot to complain about on either end for about a month. So I feel kind of bad beating on him. He was sort of due for a bad game, but he was letting one dribble just saloon door. We're talking like, what was the year where Lucas showed up to camp at 275? Like that, it was real, like just Olay style defense. And you can't do that. You just can't do it. Offensively, he was making, Luke always makes good passes. He ends up with 14 assists. He has a ball all the time. These things are going to happen. He didn't shoot. He shot 2-point shots in the first half. Yeah. 2. Drive. I know he doesn't want to get hit every time. And frankly, Walker Kessler had his number tonight. He just did. And that's the first time I can remember, like, a shot blocker blocked Luka's 3-point shot on a step back. Can't remember.
And he got him at the rim too.
And he got him at the rim on a night. Like he had a kind of almost like a curl heading to the basket where Kyrie found him, threaded him, got it right at the rim, and he just got stuffed by Kessler. And, sometimes you don't have it. And he's been playing 40-some, like the season, December, I think he played the most minutes per game he's ever played over a stretch. So I feel bad beating on him, but he's a team leader and he came out and played awful, which gives everyone else a chance to play awful. Just to be quite candid, like Tim in the chat, I think it was Tim Clark. I'm going and looking for he asked if Luka's hurt. And I think the way to discuss whether Luka is hurt or not is he able to play? Are you hurt or are you injured? Kind of discussion. At this point, Luka's always hurt. I'm sorry. He's 260 pounds. He is a tank. He gets hammered on to no avail by the refs. He's hurt a lot. This quad is going to bother him the whole year. Also, I think the Mavericks use that as kind of a paper excuse to get out of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think that, Luka's shooting so well from 3 this year, it gives him kind of an opportunity of when to pick and choose. He hit, I want to say, 2 threes to start the second quarter and just fell in love with himself and didn't stop. And at that point, he missed 3 more and he needed to stop. That was the real tough one.
Yeah, 20 shots total, 7 of them are threes. 7 of them are twos. Sorry, 13 of them are threes.
That's a bad shot diet for one of the guys. He shoots, again, guys, or at least prior to this game, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, but Kevin O'Connor shared the stat. He shoots 82% on unassisted shots in the restricted area. go there.
Yeah. And especially like the starting lineup the Jazz played. I mean, they didn't play center. I mean, Fontecchio, Markkanen, Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not shot blockers. So Utah was switching pretty much everything, which I guess, switching against Luka is one way to keep him, because, he loves to go, he loves to attack like drop and doubles, and that's the way he gets to the rim. Maybe not with doubles, but like he loves to attack drop. That's a good way to get him to the basket. Or he likes to attack switches when it's a switch with a big man and he can get to the rim, or he can kind of cradle them into that step back three. I mean, the Jazz just kind of kept, with that starting lineup, they kind of just kept switching, just kind of rangy wings on him. And he just had no desire to get to the rim. And then when they played Kessler, they did play a little bit more drop, a little bit more hedge, a little more show and recover, pick and roll coverage. And then, of course, Kessler has 4 blocks. He blocks Luka twice. So it was just not, he fell in love with the three against the smaller lineup because they were switching, and he felt like it was probably the path of least resistance on a night where maybe he just wasn't having it. And then when Kessler was in, he probably thought, okay, there's like, because, he loves attacking big men, like slow foot. I'm not saying Kessler is slow footed, but like he loves going after like the traditional center. Like, think of your Zubac, like Zubac.
Yep.
He loves going after Gobert, even though he's like defensive player of the year. Like he loves going after centers. And he saw Kessler and it was like, okay, now I'm going to start cooking. I'm going to start doing things. And Kessler just had his number. So, it just cascaded. Like there was never a lineup combination where it felt like Luka could, assert his dominance in terms of getting to the basket, unless he kind of forced the issue. And he really didn't force the issue. He was pretty passive. And then the Jazz, I think they play either the most zone or the second most zone this season. I know it was brought up on the broadcast. So that also deterred him from getting to the rim. And I think that also, I don't know what it is about professional basketball players when they see zone defense and they act like they've never seen it before. But that happened tonight, if you want to talk about that, which that kind of feels like what happened to the role players. The zone defense was pretty effective in that regard. I don't know if you want to talk about Kyrie.
I do. And so I think the Kyrie conversation for tonight's game is best served understanding that when you miss 12 straight games, you get a fair amount of leeway to come, to kind of find yourself. And what I will say is, with the exception of the burst at the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter, he didn't really give you a lot to make you feel comfortable with his health. Kyrie is not a foul merchant, which works against him in a lot of circumstances because he doesn't milk stuff. He had a right-handed layup and actually a left-handed layup too at the rim, makes both of them, but also gets hit. And just, I think if he falls down, he probably gets a call, and he doesn't. And, life just kind of goes on, but he shot some exceptionally difficult shots tonight.
He only shot 3 threes, which is weird. That's right. Weird. He needs to be shooting more threes.
Well, this is a kind of incredible comment in the chat. Fan123 says Kyrie is so boring to watch, and I want to use that as a jumping off point because I disagree in the sense of I feel like Kyrie is waiting for particular moments to strike, and he's being such a facilitator to the point to where he's a bystander. And I'm sorry, if he's the guy out there and there's Tim Hardaway and Jaden Hardy, I don't want to fucking see those other two dribble. I don't want to do it. Like, stop putting Hardy in that position. Really don't put Tim in that position. Like, let's let Kyrie Irving orchestrate an offense, please. And that's on Kyrie. That's the real thing here. It's like earlier in the chat, it was kind of driving me crazy because there's these people, we got to get Kid out of here. First of all, Kid serves by the grace of Luka and Kyrie. Let's be clear. Okay. Like the moment they're sick of him, that's when he'll be gone. Until then, I really don't want to talk about Jason Kidd that much. But Kyrie can do Kyrie things. He is choosing not to. He is. Like, this is a man who can put his imprint on the game whenever he wants, and he is choosing not to. Until and that sort of just, it's driving me a little bit nuts, even if I understand why.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this was a case of him easing back into a game. I mean, he hadn't played in almost a month. So I didn't expect him to look lights out. But I mean, that's why they're going to lose. Because if he's playing 32 minutes and he's not a productive offensive player, which he wasn't, he was 6 of 14 from the floor, He only got to the free throw line once. We talked about how that's, partly because he doesn't over exaggerate, which I think is pretty admirable that he doesn't do that. But it's kind of like that when Monte Ellis was in Dallas, he also never got to the free throw line because he didn't exaggerate. We only had four assists, only one turnover, which is nice. But
a lot
like
of rebounds,
points,
which made me laugh. He kind of got sick. There was a point
Jazz shot a lot of threes. They had a lot of long rebounds, which he got for sure. But like I'm just saying, like if he's not, he has to dominate the game offensively. If he's not, that's big trouble because you're playing Luka and Kyrie together a lot of minutes, and if you're playing those two guys a lot of minutes, it's hard. I'm not saying they can't be a good defense or a winning defense. You're behind the eight ball. Like if those two guys are struggling so much offensively, like you already know that you're not going to get awesome defense with those two as part of a 5-man unit. Like that's how you see a result like tonight. Like the Jazz basically kind of did whatever they wanted offensively. They only shot 12 of 44 from three. So this isn't one of those games where you sit back and throw your hands up and be like, nothing the Mavericks could have done. Utah got hot. No, they kicked the Mavericks' asses when the Mavericks were on defense. Like they got in the paint pretty well. And that's, if Kyrie is not, and this goes for Luka too, this isn't just a Kyrie thing. Like if those guys are not on their games offensively, it just kind of snowballs on the defensive end. The Jazz had 66 points in the paint. That is a lot.
And so the kind of moral of that story is that, when your top two offensive options aren't very good on offense in a given day and also don't really try that hard on defense, it's going to be hard for anything else to sort of manifest. I have a guy, I love this. Jay Gowrie in the chat says Luka was great one-on-one defensively. Again, my man, the Fonz scored 12 points on Luka to open the game. I've never heard of that guy before, and he absolutely kicked Luka's butt. Did Luka play better defense in the second part of the game? Yeah, but there's lots of these things where it's like when you see Luka or Kyrie and then Josh Green, God, when I see guys get beat off of single dribble moves, it makes me lose my mind. It means that it's like, do you not know your man's tendencies? It just, that sort of stuff. It wasn't contested threes. And I'm sorry.
Go back and rewatch his threes, those first three games. Yeah. Luka was not, he was off ball. He could be right. Maybe Luka was okay one-on-one, but the Jazz didn't attack him one-on-one. They attacked him off the ball using screening actions and stuff to get him out of position.
Effort thing too, where you could kind of throw your hands up at most of the team tonight on defense. Like I can't with some of these guys on nights like tonight. And like, when you go through the lineup and you kind of bitch about everybody, like Lively's just had he's the man. We love Lively, but he's also had he's just had kind of a real rough defensive edge. And I don't know. I think that's where it kind of comes back into I said in game, I really don't like this switch-based scheme the Mavericks run sometimes, because when it doesn't work, they're getting burned all the time because the handoffs on the switches aren't smooth because guys aren't crisp. And, Luka or Josh Green gets run into a screen for the nth time and doesn't know what to do. The man who he's handing off to is then a step behind. And it's just, I get why they do it, because when it works, it actually looks pretty good, but it's just like, sometimes they just don't have it. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, I know. And I wonder with Lively, do you feel like there's enough tape on him now that maybe teams are just challenging him in different ways a bit more? Or do you think, because he had a run where, he had 2, 7, 2, 2, 1, 3, 2 blocks. Since then, funny enough that he got hurt in the Portland game. Since he came back from the Portland game, he has 3 blocks in 5 games, which is by far his lowest. Like if you pulled a stretch of like 5 games, that's the least amount of blocks he's had in multiple games in a row sometimes. So on one hand, I wonder if the ankle is not all the way there. And he's just missing a little bit of burst at the rim. Another point is I wonder if teams are just know him more now and are figuring out his tendencies, and he's not like this new fresh faced kid that no one has any tape on, NBA tape on at least, and they're figuring him out. And then 3, he's kind of in it. Like, I mean, you have so many 1-on-2 situations at when guys are getting to the rim so cleanly against him, it's just unreasonable to ask him to clean up so many mistakes.
That I think is kind of the big point. And there was like this game deserved like Benny Hill music at certain points, where this goes for Luka, Josh Green, who, man, we'll circle back to Josh, but like Derek Lively missed a couple of lobs. Like there were just so many like, what is happening plays to these Mavericks, to where I kind of just want to say, all right, throw this game completely out. Let's get 2 right games against the Portland Trailblazers and then move on. But I think we kind of owe it just to talk about this game as a whole. You saw.
We don't. Before you, I sorry to interrupt, but like, no one's ringing any alarm bells over here. But we're allowed to talk about a crappy game when a crappy game happens.
I know. It's just if you're a person who wants to like turn off the podcast and go on to the next one, this is definitely one that I understand, because it's like, we said that the Cleveland Cavaliers game was probably the worst loss of the year because they should have won this game or that game. This game, in hindsight, the Mavericks didn't have it from the get-go, and you don't really know where to put like the blame doesn't lie with one particular person. I mean,
no,
this is a game where you have fans wanting to ship Tim Hardaway off, but Tim Hardaway also sort of proved his value by when he's 0 for 6 from 3. And when Tim Hardaway's not hitting, the offense just doesn't look the same. And that's where you hope a Kyrie Irving will start, picking up the pace on offense. And he wasn't able to tonight. First game back. That's fine. And it's just, there's elements of this where if you want to kind of, hand wave it, fine. If you really want to get into the weeds, I also get that too. And that's where, we'll talk a little bit like Tim. I just wish Tim would hit shots. That's kind of the nature of it. I don't know who I want to talk about next, because I think that, when Dante Exum goes down, his heel contusion,
that's big.
That's big, because they just sort of figured out that they want to use him, only for the fact that I bet he's not available for a couple of games.
Yeah. I mean, he's been kind of the linchpin over the last month, aside from Luka. Like, the story is Luka for December, and then it was Exum. And it's a bummer, because that was the talk, like the Jones, Exum, Doncic, Kyrie, Lively lineup played like 50 or 70 possessions, some small number, like less than a game's worth of possessions. And it was awesome. Like, that data said it was awesome. But again, it was less than a game's worth of data for the most part. And they finally get it. And now they're not, they might not get it back to it quickly. So that sucks, because you wanted to see what Exum looks like. This version of Exum looks like in the starting lineup with Luka and Kyrie. Like, if they're going to have to put that on hold for a little bit, that's frustrating. I want
to address one thing, because this is an interesting thing. So Ash in the chat asks, why being so hard on Kyrie? Number one, we're not.
Yeah.
Number two, I think it's worth like talking about, because we criticize and praise everybody pretty equally. But I will just be candid. Like, Bobby in the chat is like, why is everybody so light on Kyrie? And there is something to that, Bobby. I frankly don't feel like dealing with a bunch of 17-year-olds telling me how fucking good Kyrie Irving is. That happens every time you criticize the guy. Every time you say anything, even remotely, well, he's not God's gift to basketball, and you get a whole bunch of like Kyrie Super Stan accounts, and then they'll probably clip this and put it out there tonight. And it's just like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it for me, because I don't feel like dealing with that. I'm also literally not that bothered by his performance tonight, because it's his first game back. But you asked the question of, do you want him to shoot more? I do want Kyrie to look like I want Kyrie to be the second guy. I want him to be the second guy who's capable of being the number one guy. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
He signed a great deal for the Mavericks and for him relative to his talent. 3 years, $120 million. I want him to look like it some nights. And then they're just like, you go look at box scores, and he never really has a terrible box score. But there are games when you're watching, and you're like, Kyrie was out there for 36 minutes. I didn't notice that he was out there. And like, he's just too talented for that. And the comeback to that will be, well, Luka has the ball all the time. And let me tell you, that's just not the case. Whenever Luka's on the bench, he can't have the ball. So that's just sort of where I was thinking about with that, where it's just, I'm sure he'll come back and just beat the shit out of Portland. The two get right games from Portland is definitely what this team needs if they're going to come together. So
yeah, for sure. But unfortunately, like Utah game could have been a get right. Like, you know, they're kind of in the same.
Lauri Markkanen is just
Portland's
the kind of guy.
Worse. Yeah, Portland's definitely a worse team for sure.
Lauri is just so he strikes fear into you because he plays the same way, kind of, you know, like a more athletic earlier in his prime Dirk plays. Not to be, you know, he's an attacker and he's big and he's skilled and like Dallas just doesn't really have anybody to guard him. Even though
have that awesome of a game tonight.
No, but his second quarter was pretty like he was pretty dope. He was pretty dope. So anyway, then you get to kind of the rest of these guys. And so it's like a chicken or the egg thing where you kind of hold Luka and Kyrie the most responsible since they're the stars. But then you look at the other players and you're like, what is it you guys do here? Where, you know, if you want to hear me criticize somebody, Ash, we're going to talk about two players right now who I don't want to see play basketball anymore. The first is Grant Williams. What is going on with this guy?
I don't know. I was trying to be the voice of reason with him, and people were very mad. You know, were not okay with that because I was just like, I can't imagine he's probably not the player that he started the season. Like he's not a 50% 3-point shooter or whatever he was in the first 7 games. But I also just couldn't believe that he was the player that he's been for like the last 3 weeks. And like the two, like being so bad on two, like he's so bad on twos. His 3-point shooting for the season is still about in line with what he's done the last 2 to 3 years. So like, I don't know if I'm ready to pull the ripcord yet, but like, he just keeps stacking these crappy games on top of crappy games, and not just like missing a bunch of shots and like scoring 11 points, but he goes 2 of 10 from 3. Like just these invisible performances where he's not even shooting probably as much as he should, because I wonder if he's in his head.
Oh, he's definitely in his head. That pass from the right wing that he threw out of bounds to the baseline was one, and that was like in the third quarter. There's just a guy who he cannot get anything going, and the way the Mavericks play, unfortunately, he just has to hit a shot.
I know his job is, I mean, defensively they probably ask too much of him, but offensively they're not asking him to do anything outside of his comfort zone. They're asking him to spot up and hit threes, and that's what he did in Boston. And the fact that he's doing that in Dallas and he's playing with Luka, and occasionally, you know, now he's playing with Kyrie. Luka is by far the best 3-point shot creator in the league, I think. He's significantly better passer than anything he had in Boston, and that's no disrespect to anyone in Boston.
It's true. Yeah.
Like the fact that his 3-point shooting is going through such a rough slump when you consider the looks that he gets and his role, it's just tough. And then like, yeah, the season, you know, he's shooting 39% on the season, which still looks good, but like he just has not had back-to-back good games since November. He scored in double digits 4 times since November 18th, and each one of those has been followed up by like one of his worst games of the season. He scored 16 against Memphis, and then he had 5 against OKC, 19 against the Lakers, and he had 5 on 2 of 11 shooting against Minnesota, 14 against the Spurs, then he had 3 in 27 minutes against the Suns. He had 10 against the Warriors, and you're like, all right, is he getting back to it? And then, you know, tonight, 18 minutes, 4 points, misses all 3. So like, he just has not been able to string together consecutive solid performances since, you know, before Thanksgiving. I mean, it's just getting to the point now where like, I wanted to be like, well, let's wait till February. Let's see if this stabilizes. But it just keeps getting worse, I feel like, which is it's just baffling. And I had low expectations. I was not expecting this guy to be like, oh, he's going to average like 15 and 5, and he's going to be like this super role player, super starter. I just thought he was going to be like a younger Dorian Finney-Smith, which really wasn't. I thought that wasn't a high expectation for him. And unfortunately, he is playing like a younger Dorian Finney-Smith in the sense that he's playing like Dorian Finney-Smith in Dorian's like first 3 years.
Well, you know, but here's the special. Here's kind of the additive part.
Yeah.
Dorian never did a damn thing that I can think of that embarrassed me as a
This
fan.
is the other part of it that sucks.
Like this jobber bullshit that he's doing, where he's acting like a shitty wrestler coming in and hitting somebody with a chair from behind. I'm tired of it. Okay, you get into a physical altercation on the court. You and I played. People in the chat, you've played. Shit happens in the moment of competition. And sometimes you do something you regret and you walk away from it. And that stuff frustrates me, but then I'm kind of like, all right, whatever. Tonight, you had to see Seth walking him off the floor. Shut the fuck up and get off the floor. Who do you think you are to continue pointing and yelling and ranting? You're the guy that shot 2 of 7 from the floor for 4 points and 3 turnovers. Go away. You don't get to do stuff like this. You are not who you think you are. You are Grant Williams, the Mavs' 8th man off the bench.
Yeah, the fact that he's been demoted to the bench and it's like, this isn't getting any better. Like, that's where, like, I was like, well, maybe he's playing against bench players and this is going to get better, and it's not. And yeah, like, he had a technical tonight after getting in a tangle with Keontae George, and it was just
a
like,
rookie. Grow up, man.
It's just like, I can handle players playing poorly because it happens. I'm a Dwight Powell defender, so I know all about defending players playing poorly. That's in my wheelhouse. But at least Powell like doesn't do anything that's like, I mean, you could say his play at times can be embarrassing, but like, I'm just talking about like keeping it, like he keeps his head in the game for the most part. He isn't trash talking while he's missing all of his threes. He isn't getting technical fouls. He isn't getting dumb offensive fouls because he loses his cool because he's playing like crap.
Yep.
Like, that's the part where I'm like, if you're gonna like goon it up, like be like that kind of guy and also stink, like, that's hard. That's hard to defend. Like, and it's just not fun to watch. Like, I don't want to watch a guy like pick up crappy, cheap fouls and talk smack and like thinking that he's like getting his team into the game, you know, by being that instigator. Like Draymond Green was an instigator, but he also, for like his first like 4 or 5 years of his career, was like the best defensive player ever. Like, you're coming off the bench and missing all your 3-pointers. Like, you have to earn that ability to act, to behave like that on the court, I feel like. And that's just, it just makes it worse. It's just, it's not aesthetically pleasing. It's not fun to watch. So please stop.
And then we come to Josh Green had a great game against the Golden State Warriors.
He really did.
Just like a game where I was questioning, like, did they like fake an injury so he could get his shot right? You know, because I mean, it was like his shot was great. Played a great game.
Yeah.
And then there's tonight where it's just he's actually the personification of Benny Hill music. Like, the way Josh played tonight was like an emblematic for the entire Mavericks team, because the mistakes and the weirdness just can't be competed with. Like, number one, I wish someone had never pointed out to me what happens when he sees a screen, or rather doesn't see a screen, because every time I see him run into a screen, one, I wonder if he's going to hyperextend his elbow, because he leads like he's Derrick Henry with that arm, and like that hurts after a while.
You think that's how he's had the elbow injury 2 years in a row now?
I mean, I have no idea what I'm talking about here. That is what I think. Yes. Okay. But then there's like the offensive stuff like that. That he runs the floor so hard, and it's really great.
Yeah, he does.
But didn't he miss a dunk, or did he miss an oop?
I can't remember. Lively missed an oop.
Lively missed a dunk. Yeah.
Are you talking about the play in the first half where he looked off Luka?
That one was, I'd forgotten about that. So there's 2 Josh Green plays which were particularly harrowing in hindsight. Was the one that resulted, it was in the third quarter, that resulted in the Jazz calling a coaching challenge, because the NBA refs were like, there's just no way an NBA player can lose a ball like this. It was on a fast break. He catches it under the rim. He pump fakes, and then the ball goes out of bounds. He just should have laid it up the first time, or taken the hit or something. And he like managed to do none of those things, which was just truly remarkable. And then there was the first half one where he gets a long rebound on the right side of the floor. Luka calls for it because it's semi-transition.
And Kessler's guarding him.
He ignores Luka, which I actually think that was the right call. Push the ball up the floor. Get the ball up the floor. Don't do the Luka walk it up thing. But then he's on the right side of the floor, and due to transition defensive matchups, Luka has Walker Kessler on him. and Luka's waving, and he just ignores Luka entirely and takes it to the rim and gets stuffed by the basket. I think it was bad, and that was when I was like, okay, the game is done. The game is done. So
yeah, that was tough. He had, what did he have? 0 points. He had 0 points, 0 for 4 from the field, 0 for 1 from 3.
And he's had some good games. So it's,
well, he had one good game.
I pick on him. No, he's had a lot of high assist games. He's been a connecting piece. I feel bad for picking on him, but it's just like there are times that I'm like, does he know how to play basketball at all?
I understand picking on him, but compared to last season, this is not, I think, what most people were expecting him to look like this season. I mean, he has not taken another step forward, which I know not all player development is linear. And he was on a pretty linear path from rookie year to last year, like skyrocketing from year over year. So it was very unsustainable for him to take another leap above that, but he's regressed in some areas this year. That's a little, it's still early enough, and he missed enough games that he could still obviously turn it around. But yeah, the defense stuff is honestly, the offense stuff, that's going to come and go. Like, I never really believed a lot in his offense last season because it was just so ridiculous. Like, his true shooting numbers were he was not going to match that again. So like him cooling off on offense is kind of whatever. Mm-hmm. The fact that he's still we're in year 4, and I feel like he's just not there as a defensive impact player yet is probably the thing that I'm a little more bummed out than anything else.
Yeah. And it's I don't know. I mean, despite my disgust at this game, like this is why we do these podcasts. I mean, I do these as much to talk about the Mavericks, to get my own feelings out, than to make content for everybody else. Just because I'm going to watch these games. Even when Josh tells me to take the night off, which he has been doing, I'll still watch like at least 2/3 of a given game. And so it's good to kind of talk about this stuff. I think they'll bounce back. I do think they'll be fine. I've enjoyed, there's one guy in the chat, Henry, who says, the Mavericks need to trade Kyrie to the Lakers for kind of that poo-poo platter of guys. I don't necessarily, if things are weird by mid-February, I don't want to say anything's off the table there. Not gonna lie there.
But they're playing okay.
But they're playing they're number one. They're better than the Lakers. So so it's, unless Kyrie's like, I want to go to the Lakers and I'm going to sit out and do stuff, which I just don't think he's going to do. I think the trade season element of this, and I wanted to talk to you about this for a little bit. The trade season is going to absolutely drive our fan base hopelessly and recklessly insane. Could you kind of walk us through why?
I think because the team is maybe a little bit, some people have probably expected this, but they're 19-15, so they're in a really good spot. The West, the East, Boston is a juggernaut. There's like 3 juggernaut teams in the East. I don't think anyone truly, like Minnesota and Oklahoma City are really good. Denver's obviously great. But I think people feel like after the top 3, there's some opportunity for the Mavericks to maybe butt their way in. So the fact that they're 4 games above 500, they're having a pretty good season, they're within range for home court. People want them to push the chip. Like, anytime a team is close to contending, a fan base is going to want them to push the chips in. And I just don't know what chips the Mavericks have to push in right now compared to what a lot of these other teams that are also contending or near contention have. And I think that's going to make things difficult. And I'm already bad at coming up with fake trades, but I think the Mavericks have like one future first they could trade right now. Then they can't. There's not really much else until
27.
Yeah. But if they wait till the draft, they have more future picks that open up to them that they could trade. Mm-hmm. They've got contracts, like they can match money pretty well, but they, Green and Hardy not looking good this season, or as good as they should. There's just not that one or two blue chip young players that you can throw in one of these trades. Like, the OG Anunoby trade. Like, who is the Mavericks Emmanuel Quickly? Like, he is a significantly better young player than either Josh or Jaden Hardy. If you're not trading a bunch of first round picks, which the Mavericks don't currently have the ability to, you got to trade guys. And I don't unless they're, dumping salary, like I just don't see how they can swing the big third star trade or big third best player trade right now.
Mhm.
But I've been surprised before. I didn't
No,
think
that's true.
so. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to poo-poo anyone, but I just don't see how it lines up at the deadline. I can see how maybe in the summer they can get creative when some picks free up, and
That's what I think. And there's a reasonable sports mindset of, well, if you think you have a chance to win, you need to go for it right now.
Mhm.
And a night like tonight is kind of a reminder that I don't think the Mavericks are there yet. Like, I'm really delighted with the 19 and 15 overall. I think they'll win these next two against Portland. They'll be 6 games above 500, and then they hit kind of a tougher part of their schedule. And then if they come out of the end of January, like 3 games north of 500, I'd be pretty happy. I know that's not enough for some people, and I get why, but this is, to me, I just keep kind of circling back to, for as much as I get mad about game to game stuff, the big picture is they missed the play-in last year. Yes, they tanked, but they, the way that this franchise is where they are, and the chat is getting incredibly frustrated right now with one another. The Mavericks are where they are, guys, because of risks that they've taken that haven't paid off. Like, at a certain point, the bill comes due. The Mavericks made the close to an equivalent all-in trade for Kyrie Irving last year. We just have to express that. Like, yes, they still have 1 pick left, but then they sent a 2030 trade for Grant Williams. Until they move out from what they owe the Knicks, they don't have a lot of flexibility. And so if you're happy, you're probably not happy, but I'm enjoying watching this team, understanding that I would love to see them make the playoffs, which I think is a pretty high likelihood thing. And I would love to see the matchup with who they get in the first round, and maybe they surprise somebody. That's the extent of my expectations right now. Now, maybe things change. Maybe Kyrie really comes alive and he and Luka figure out something and they just start mowing teams down. That is absolutely within the range of possibility.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm a Pascal Siakam truther, man. I mean, he's my boy. I love this guy. I've told this story in Slack. My first job out of college.
I didn't know this till today. How did I not know this?
My first job out of college, I was a sports reporter for a newspaper in McAllen, Texas, which is in the Valley. And I got the UT Pan American beat, and their men's basketball team played in the WAC, which played New Mexico State. At the same time, Pascal Siakam played at New Mexico State. So I got to see him in college, and he was awesome in college. He was a late bloomer. He didn't really start playing basketball till like his like junior or senior year of high school, coming to America. And he did play his only year of high school basketball, I think, in Louisville. So he has some Texas ties. So I didn't see him in high school, but I saw him up close in college in small arenas with like 200 people in a gym. And I'm sitting like almost, on the court, because I'm in those small college gyms where the press can pretty much sit right at courtside. So I've always had an affinity for him, even with, I always like his type of player too, like big forwards that can score and do stuff. Like, I love those guys. I mean, everyone does. So if they could trade for him, they should. Like, I would push in all the chips to trade for Pascal Siakam right now. Like, I would do that in a heartbeat. But my thing is more, I just don't know. I don't know how they beat some offers. Now, some fans have told me like they think that the market won't be as competitive because of his pending free agency, and that's where I'm like, okay, I don't know. Like, I'm not good at predicting that kind of stuff.
The pick allocation with certain franchises is so out of whack right now that it really distorts what the market is, and is hard to tell. Because if you would have told me that Knicks offer, and there's a couple of folks in the chat that I saw earlier probably talking about this, the offer that the Knicks ended up getting, sitting out for OG Anunoby, like, oh, why can't Dallas do that?
They don't have 2 players like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley.
No, but they also, like, that was like such an agency based trade.
I know.
Get into the weeds. Like, it's not like you move past that, and like that's the other dirty part about this that we never really talk about. Is like there's elements of agency stuff that doesn't make sense to us because we care about the team. the moment, Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams started telling us about agents was the moment that a lot of this stuff was like lost. And like, I stopped caring because I don't want to talk about that stuff. I don't really want to think about who's so-and-so's agent. I mean, that's part of the reason, like realistically, I would guess that part of the reason that there was that back end swapping of players for the Mavericks on the G League guys the other day is like agency based stuff. So I just, the OG stuff is fun to talk about. I'm sorry. The Siakam stuff is fun to talk about in theory. And I would be obviously very pleased if the Mavericks pulled it off. I do think though, and I keep saying this, but it's like at a certain point, the bill comes due, and if that's the move you make, that's the move you make. Like that, you might not be able to make many moves past that. So, is this the team that you're happy with? Like the Mavericks aren't going to have draft picks for a while. They aren't going to have free agency space. They aren't going to have picks to trade or use. So it's just, they got to be careful here. And I think that's really underrated in the moment because we're so excited about, the Mavs are 4 games above 500. Well, if they're playing 500 basketball by the end of January, just because they played a slightly harder schedule, are you going to feel differently about the team? I think the answer is probably yes. And so at that point, maybe you have a different outlook on this team. I mean, a lot of folks don't want to waste what Luka's doing. I get it. I don't want to tell you. I know. See, Proud Vet says same spot as last year. Disaster. No. Like Derek Lively exists. He is such a foundational piece that it's hard to contextualize. Like if we would have missed out on Lively, like made the playoffs, they would have gone into this year's lineup again with Dwight Powell as the starting center, and maybe Dwight Howard. God, he would have been like one of the guys available to them. Like they wouldn't have made any of these things. Like team building is so difficult, and we sometimes want to say it's easy because it's fun to talk about, but it's really hard. And the Mavericks are in a better place.
I understand what they're saying because the Mavericks were 22-16 on January 2nd of last year. But that was because they had just won 7 in a row against a cupcake schedule. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think that the Mavericks are going to lose. Man, what did they lose? I don't know what the rate they lost games was toward the end of the season, but I think the roster is in a much better position to avoid what happened last season.
Yeah. No, and you make it to the summer, and if something's available at the trade deadline, this team has earned enough goodwill from me, the constant naysayer, to say, all right, I have to trust they know what they're doing. As much as I don't like the Grant Williams of it all right now, or even the Josh Green signings, those two things made sense. It's just up to those basketball players to figure their own shit out. Derek Jones Jr., Dante Exum, absolute. Derek Lively, absolutely outstanding. We're just, this is, you lost like this, and fan 123 is really taking this loss really hard, and I get why. It's going to be okay. I really do think that. All right.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
How do we talk for 45 minutes about this?
Because we haven't talked a lot lately.
That's true.
We need to get it out of our system.
That's right. All right. I will be back for the Wednesday game, though. I am solo parenting 2 children that night, so I may not have the smartest of takes, though a regular listener would probably say it's not like you have the smartest of takes anyways. So we'll be back. We'll be back on Wednesday night for that first Portland game. You got anything else before we go?
No, I don't think so. I think people are frustrated, rightly so, but 2 straight home games against the Portland Trailblazers should be the nice tonic to cure everyone's the bad taste in everyone's mouth right now. So just try to be chill.
Oh yeah, and I'll probably host one of the live streams after this. It's just I got to get to bed because Lord knows my wife might wake me up at 5 a.m. and tell me to hey, go deal with the baby. So everybody be good. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate everybody in here. Go Mavs.